A chatbot that hallucinates a recipe wastes a dinner. A credit underwriting agent that hallucinates a covenant violates federal banking guidance, triggers model risk management escalation, and under the EU AI Act's high-risk provisions, taking effect August 2026, exposes the institution to penalties of up to 7% of global annual turnover. The harness matters everywhere. In finance, it is load-bearing. Here is where the industry actually stands. AI in finance is growing from $38 billion in 2024 to a projected $190 billion by 2030. 44% of finance teams will touch agentic AI in 2026. And yet only 7% of financial institutions have scaled AI enterprise-wide. 78 to 88% of enterprise AI pilots stall before production. The gap is almost never the model. The model is a commodity. The gap almost always is the harness. Finance has two structural reasons the harness is harder here than anywhere else. First, audit trails are not engineering hygiene, they are legal artifacts. A bank cannot tell a regulator, the LLM said so. It must show the input that was retrieved, the tool that was called, the verification that was run, the human who signed off, and the timestamp on each. Second, the Federal Reserve's SR 11.7 guidance already specifies 6 distinct control surfaces the harness must implement. Not suggestions, the regulatory floor. Now let's map the 5 harness pillars to what they actually mean in finance practice. Think of each pillar not as an abstract engineering concept, but as the specific finance problem it solves. Tool execution means controlled calls to live financial data APIs. Persistence means the audit contract, the immutable record a regulator can reconstruct. Verification means calibrated confidence, not model self-assessment. Guardrails mean typed schemas, not prose instructions. And safe execution means observable agents with cost ceilings and kill switches. Which pillar do you think is weakest in most pilots? Let's see these pillars in action across the 4 student projects. CreditMind is the persistence and human gate story. Every analyst output writes to a persistent store before the next wave reads it. The AI Alternative Investments Research Associate is the typed handoff story, typed contracts and force schema at every boundary between SEC filings. The Equity Commodities Spillover Monitor is the verification story, per agent posteriors from backtested hit rates. And the CRE Intelligence Platform is the safe execution story, scheduled autonomous agents with source quote guardrails baked into the schema. Now we get to the hardest part. Think about a retail financial advisor. They are not one thing, they are a molecule. They are the client's work partner, helping translate financial goals into a plan. They are the agent of record, legally authorized to execute trades. They are the supervisor, checking suitability and flagging compliance issues. And sometimes they are the judge, overriding what the client says they want when it conflicts with what the client actually needs. 4 roles. 1 human. And the hard problem is not any single role, it lives at the seams between them. Here is the seam that gets firms sued. A client wants to move $200,000 into a concentrated single stock position. The agent of record says execute. The supervisor says file a concentration risk flag, and if the pattern matches, an AML alert. A human advisor navigates this tension with professional codes, compliance training, and the felt weight of a license that can be revoked. An AI advisor has none of that felt weight. Nothing inside the model feels the shame of losing a license. The harness must substitute for it. So what does the harness do at the seam? It substitutes engineering for professional codes. Concretely, every trade intent routes through a supervisor subagent whose outputs are typed, logged, and escalated before the agent of record is allowed to act. The routing layer is not a UX nicety. It is the engineered substitute for shame, license, and professional code. You can see this exact pattern in CreditMind's IC Gate, a hard checkpoint between the credit modeler's recommendation and the actual credit decision. The gate is mandatory. No bypass. No override without a logged human signature. Now let's look at 4 distinct architecture patterns from the student projects, each one solving a different harness problem. Pattern 1 is the CreditMind shape, parallel fanout, sequential deepen, hard human gate. Wave 1 runs 4 analyst agents in parallel: financial, EBITDA, commercial, legal, each working an independent slice of the credit file. Wave 2 deepens sequentially. Credit modeler feeds stress tester, feeds risk scorer, feeds covenant structurer. Then the IC memo writer composes. And a hard human gate, mandatory, no bypass, stands between the recommendation and any downstream action. Pattern 2 is the AI Alternative Investments Research Associate shape, cross-source reconciliation with typed handoffs. The challenge is that agents pull from heterogeneous filings, 13FXML equity holdings, ADV investment advisor registrations, Form D fund offerings. Each source uses different terminology for the same concept. The reconciliation agent enforces cross-source invariance. Does the AUM and the 13F match the AUM and the ADV? Does the fund count in Form D match the ADV fund count? Type dict contracts at every boundary. When a divergence exceeds threshold, a research director agent decides, requery, escalate, or flag for human review. Pattern 3 is the equity commodities spillover monitor shape, signal posterior with labeled benchmarks. Multiple detection methods, transfer entropy, Granger causality, Diebold-Yilmaz, each produce a signal. But here is what makes this design rigorous: each signal also carries a calibrated posterior probability, derived from that method's actual backtest hit rate against 56 labeled benchmark cases. You are not trusting the model's confidence in itself. You are trusting its track record. Agents whose posteriors decay below threshold are automatically retired. The verification loop is the harness. Pattern 4 is the CRE intelligence platform shape, scheduled autonomous loop with extraction guardrails. 20 agents run on a cadence set by AP Scheduler. Every extraction step requires a source quote field in its structured JSON output. The agent literally cannot return a fact it cannot cite. A JSON cache layer over census, FRED, BLS, and finance data pulls makes every run reproducible. When a regulator asks what the BLS employment print was on the day a loan was approved, the system gives a deterministic answer. 37 labeled benchmark cases run on every deploy. Cost and latency budgets are enforced per step. Pause here. You have just seen 4 architectures. Before we explain why pilots fail, consider this: all 4 patterns share something in common that most pilots skip. What is it? The answer: all 4 built the harness before the agents. And that is exactly why 78 to 88% of pilots stall. They build in the wrong order. The typical pilot has no persistence layer a regulator would accept. It has prompt engineering but no context engineering. The agent is smart in isolation and incoherent across a workflow. And it has no verification loop tied to a labeled benchmark, so no one can say when the system is good enough to ship, or when it has drifted. The student projects in this course ship because they inverted this order. Benchmark suites exist before the agents. Type-dict contracts exist before the handoffs. Audit logs exist before the first production call. 5 principles to close. Build the audit contract before the agent. If you cannot describe what a regulator will see, you do not yet have a system. Type the seams. Every handoff between agent roles, especially between agent of record and supervisor, runs through a type-dict or equivalent contract. Pros: handoffs fail silently. Put humans at the seams, not in the middle. The IC gate, the AML escalation, the suitability override, these are the engineered substitutes for license and shame. Benchmark before you scale. A labeled case suite is the cheapest insurance a finance AI system can buy. and treat the harness as the product. The model is rented. The harness is owned. In finance, that is where the durable value lives.